Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a war film from the UK, English language, released in the year 2019, directed by Sam Mendes, and this film is called 1917. So this movie takes place on April 6, 1917, during World War I. You got two British soldiers who were tasked with a very dangerous mission of venturing through enemy territory to warn a regiment of 1,600 soldiers very far away that they're about to run into a trap. Now, this regiment believe that the Germans are retreating, but in fact the Germans are setting up a trap that's going to result in their massacre if they actually attack. And so the general tells these two soldiers, young soldiers, that the enemy have cut their phone lines, so there's no way to get this message across, and so what they have to do is put their lives on the line in order to do this. And there's added incentive because one of this duo happens to have a brother in this regiment. And so as they venture through enemy territory, they're faced with all kinds of dangers, and whether or not they can get there in time to save this other regiment is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on 1917. I was actually quite excited to see this movie. Now, you guys know that I don't really review mega budget films. I have reviewed them, but they are few and far between. And the reason why I review mega budget movies every now and then is that they really interest me. And definitely 1917 was that kind of film. A lot of people were saying that this is the greatest war film ever made. It's one of the best looking movies ever made as far as craftsmanship is concerned. So for that reason, I wanted to see it. And I wanted to see what Sam Mendes would actually do within a war subgenre that has recycled a lot of ideas before. And so it's a very simplistic idea, but the overall draw card to this movie is that it's shot in all of one continuous take. And so that is reminiscent of Birdman and also a German movie that I reviewed a long time ago called Victoria. Now, to do this, it takes a lot of skill, and I thought Sam Mendes is definitely the director that can actually pull this off. And so going into it, I was expecting a movie that would look very good, but would it be the masterpiece that everyone says it is? And at the end of the day, I will say, as far as production is concerned, this is a phenomenal masterpiece. But as far as an overall film with other elements that make a good movie, I think it falls well short. And that's an unpopular opinion, I know, because a lot of people under the sun, everyone under the sun basically says this is a masterpiece. But if I'm being brutally honest, I just thought there were moments in the movie that were lacking that does prevent it from being a masterpiece. And I think it was actually quite well short of being a masterpiece, which is something I'll go into a little bit later. But as I said, as far as production is concerned, this is one of the best movies that I have seen. This is one of the rare occasions where the director can really put you into the shoes of the soldiers, and the reason that can happen is the way he shot the film, is that this is all in one continuous take. This felt like you were a fly on their back and you were just watching through their eyes. And this is the beauty of the one take sort of shot, is that it is different. It does provide something creative in a world that has no creativity left. And so it does tell a worn sort of subject, and the courage during war and the dilemmas that young people have to face, and how you grow up very quickly during a war. And so that has been done time and time again, but it's the way this movie is shot that does provide that creativity, and only a masterful director can actually pull this sort of thing off. And I think this director does a very good job at actually putting you in the moment and giving you the sense of the horrors of war. I thought this was one of the most suspenseful films I have seen in a very long time. There could be Germans around any corner, and the director knows this. He knows that the viewer is going to be on the edge of their seat, and he's playing with the viewer. He's using the viewer as a puppet, and he's the puppeteer, and he's calling all the shots. And because of that, you're never bored, and I thought the movie just had a sustained tension from start to finish. I thought an overall simplistic idea, how is he going to maintain that level of interest in a 2-hour film? But surprisingly, Sam Mendes does a phenomenal job at giving you the impression that it's a movie that goes for a lot less than it actually does. And so I thought the runtime was brilliant. Actually, at the end of it, I wanted to see a little bit more, is because of the fact I felt like I was right beside these two on their mission. So it is a film that the cinematography, the dreariness, the mud, the wet, the rain, you could feel it. You could feel it just coming through the screen and just absorbing you as a viewer. And that is because of the way it's shot. As I said, there's close-ups, and you could see their muddy feet, and you could just feel the sweat that they were going through. And so not only are you actually going on the journey on a visual sense, but you're going on the journey on a very emotional sense as well. And so it is quite a scary sort of movie in the build-up into what could happen. As I said time and time again in movie reviews in the past, the anticipation of something really bad happening is a lot worse than when it actually happens. And this is a movie that is a demonstration of that. There is anticipation from start to finish, and it's rare that action happens. But when the action does happen, I thought it was very frenetic, it was very raw, and it was absolutely fantastic, but it was the anticipation that was even better. And so the anticipation of what's around the corner is far more terrifying than actually seeing what's around the corner. And so Sam Mendes realises this and he plays with the audience in that way, and that's what I loved about this movie the most, is that yes, on a production it is very different, but the different creative way that this movie is shot actually gives you more sense of suspense, more sense of realism, and therefore a more appreciation of what you're actually seeing on screen. So the acting was very good. I thought that although the characters are very minimal in their characterisation, I thought they do a good job at giving you very authentic reactions to certain events, and that was all fantastic. And it's quite a violent movie, but it doesn't overdo the violence to a point of actually glorifying it. It wants to show you the horrors of war, and I think it does a great job. And the way, and as I said, the creativity of the camera work gives you that added sense that you're actually watching something that is really happening. But unfortunately, this movie is not a masterpiece for the simple fact that I think that you're marvelling at the way it's shot. You're marvelling at the way it's made, and that's hiding the fact that there's not much characterisation and there's not much to the story. Is that this is a very similar story to films such as Saving Private Ryan, but what Saving Private Ryan did so well, he gave you a very emotional connection to those characters. Well, for me it did anyway, but in this movie, yes, the characters are somewhat likeable because they're young, but I didn't really care about, you don't know too much about them, and the story is just simply trying to get somewhere to prevent a massacre from happening. But I never really felt on edge because they had to get there in time. I just felt on edge because of what I was seeing as far as the anticipation of something happening at that particular moment, not the end result. And so I wasn't really chewing my fingernails to see whether or not they could get to the regiment on time. It was basically chewing your fingernails for that very, that imminent sort of danger around the corner. And so I never really felt as though there's a personal connection. It was just putting yourself into the shoes of these soldiers and going on an experience that you can have on an individual level, but as far as a personal connection to what these soldiers went through in real life, I just don't think it was there. And so it's a very simplistic sort of way in its characterization and its storytelling, but it's kind of, all of that is distracted by the fact that it is so phenomenally well made. And I think that's the problem with mega budget movies, is that they can look absolutely brilliant, but then you don't notice the shortcomings because you're so in wow of what's going on screen. And 1917 is definitely that kind of film where I was absolutely in awe of Sam Mendes and what he was doing and how he was showing you this story and the plight of the characters. But at the end of the day, you just think to yourself, well, I didn't really get much from the characters. I didn't get much from the story. I just kept thinking, all right, I'm putting myself into the shoes of these soldiers, and I'm going on. This is basically allowing you to experience what they're experiencing. But as I said, I never felt as though these soldiers could have been my friends. And during the emotional moments, they weren't quite as emotional for me because the characterization wasn't really in place. And basically, the phenomenal production was there to kind of sidetrack you, distract you from the fact that it was a simplistic kind of film. And so that's the reason why I didn't think it was a masterpiece, but putting that aside, it's one of the most brilliant films on a production levels that I've seen in a very long time. So for that, I would highly recommend it if you are a fan of war films. It is simplistic, it is a story that's been done before, but it's the way that it's been done that is the most impressive quality, and as a result of that, I'm going to give 1917 4 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.